a beautiful young woman walking alone through dark hallways. A lantern in one hand, she ends up beside the bed of a young man who has unique markings. On one side of his face, the girl wears a determined expression. It kind of seems like she's here to hurt him. But suddenly, she throws the blanket off of the sleeping man and climbs on top of him. Oh, that is not where I thought this was going. The girl, whose name is Íelina, has attempted to do this many times before and always failed. Unfortunately for her, it looks like tonight is no different. The young man beneath her rips at the bedsheets, wrapping her up in a little cocoon and placing her neatly beside him. Despite the fact that she basically forced herself on him, the man is very gentle with her and holds her close as he falls back asleep. He stays close by and asks Íelina if she's going to sleep here like this. Although she didn't achieve her mission goal, Íelina doesn't mind a little cuddle. And since this man is actually her husband, it can't hurt. She snuggles up to him, taking a good look at his chest and asking if he can take off his shirt. The man refuses, admitting that he thinks she's shameless enough to try something in his sleep. Damn, she must be really eager. Eventually, he falls asleep. Íelina wakes him up again, asking how he isn't uncomfortable sleeping in his clothes, which is her final-ditch effort before she falls asleep herself. Is anyone else confused? Well, don't worry, because it's time for some context. Íelina is the third child of Count Sort, a wealthy businessman whose family had everything they could ever wish. Elena's elder brother and sister are in constant competition to become the heir of the family, which means she can step back and live comfortably with her family support. One day, Íelina was stopped in town by a starving beggar. Reluctantly, she ordered her maid servant to bring some bread and hot soup, and gifted both to the beggar. A pretty basic thing to do if you have more money than you know what to do with. But that night, Elena's sleep was interrupted when a maid woke her up, dragging her out of bed to flee the monstrous creatures descending on the capital from the skies. Her brother, sister, and father were all dead, which came as a shock to Íelina, who had seen them all alive and well just the day before. But when she asked her maid, she told her the Count had passed away more than 10 years ago from an illness. What the heck is going on? Her siblings, too, had died over 5 years ago in a carriage accident. This all sounded crazy to Íelina, who began to grow suspicious of the maid. She remembers the face of every one of her servants, and this one was unfamiliar. She also didn't remember how she ended up in the capital or which part of the city they were in. Well, running through the ruined streets. A woman came out of her home, begging to be saved before they even stopped. The woman was killed by one of those dragon-like creatures that had taken over the sea. The maid grabbed Elena's hand and forced her to keep moving. She explained that the beasts are magical. Creatures known as Elgar. They're vicious predators, but have terrible eyesight. The next thing Íelina knew, she was on the ground and her maid had been stabbed by an Elgar. The last thing she told her mistress was to stay silent and head west to find a pub called Forest of the Sun. There she would find help. And with that, the maid died. Well, this all escalated very quickly. Wasn't she just trying to get frisky with her husband a moment ago, literally running for her life? Íelina had no choice but to continue west as she was told, following signs to the Forest of the Sun. Finally, she arrived at the pub. Banging on the door for help, she told them her name, and they opened the door, calling her Madame Moisto for some reason. Once inside, the stewards were very kind, offering her warm water with honey and a blanket. The lady introduced herself as Anna and her husband as Hans. They were surprised that she had never seen the magic beast before. They assumed she had been hiding out for the past year, as the elder had been wreaking havoc this whole time. At this point, Íelina knew something was really, truly wrong. She asked for a mirror, and after seeing her age reflection, smashed it on the ground. The year was 887, meaning that she had somehow woken up 20 years in the future. Before she could process any of this madness, the beasts found the pub, forcing them to flee through a secret passage in the basement. Anna and Hans wouldn't come with her, preferring to die together if that was what awaited them. They shut the door on her, which seems kind of cruel. Actually, poor Íelina was so panicked that she just curled up in a corner with her ears covered, praying for it all to end soon. And honestly, who can blame her? If I woke up 20 years in the future when the whole world was ending, I think I would have had a stroke. Elena's life hasn't always been easy, despite being rich and never having to worry about money or bills like the rest of us. She lost her mother at a very early age. Her father wasn't a very affectionate man, but ever since they lost her, he placed a bouquet of flowers at her grave and stayed to talk with her on the anniversary of her death. For that reason, and that reason alone, Íelina always loved her father fiercely. Her siblings were also kind to her when they weren't so busy fighting with each other. They always checked on her and bought her gifts when they could. So the idea that all of them were suddenly dead was too much for Íelina to bear. After crying her eyes out, she fell asleep in the secret passage. When she woke up, her body was aching, but she couldn't hear anything from above. So she climbed the ladder and opened the hatch. The pub was a wreck. Hans and Anna's final wish had come true, and they had died in each other's arms. Íelina was once again alone and scared out of her mind. When she heard a sound, she began to laugh, not caring if the monstrous Elgar slowly creeping closer, could hear her. She stood to meet her final moments and was brutally speared through the stomach. That was the last thing she remembers, before waking up in her own bed with her usual maid, Mary. So, was it all a... Mary assures her it was just a nightmare, but obviously something that scarring doesn't go away so easily. She asks Mary to stay a little while longer, finding comfort in the maid, who has been with her since she was very little. When the sun rises in the morning, Eleanor is convinced it wasn't just a simple nightmare somehow. She just knows she really did see the future, though why it was shown to her of all people is a mystery. Yesterday had been a normal day, apart from the interaction with the beggar. When she remembers the old lady who had begged for food, Éileanna asks her, made to find the culprit and bring her to the mansion. They did find the lady, but she refused to move even one step. So Éileanna goes to her instead. Her carriage rolls up in front of a suspicious-looking tent where the old woman is waiting for her, clearly expecting a visit. There is something strange about the woman's appearance once she has a chance to look closely. Éileanna realizes she has changed. Yesterday when they met, the woman had no ears. Now they are alone. She looks perfectly normal. Éileanna doesn't waste any time with useless questions about her appearance, knowing the vision was because of her. She asks the lady why she was shown in the future. The woman explains that everything she saw will come to pass. The empire will be preyed upon by the elder and eventually destroyed. And after that, the whole world will come to an end. Éileanna knows there must be a way to change this fate. Otherwise, why would she have been given a glimpse of the horrors to come? The old lady confirms her suspicions, but their only shot at salvation lies with Duke Caimé, a man more commonly referred to as the Duke of the Monster. Not exactly a warm, friendly guy by the sound of things, according to the old lady. The son of the Duke will one day become a hero. He will be a warrior, capable of awakening the power of a sword passed down in legend, a sword that could kill the Demon King. Currently, the child is not destined to be born. The only way to ensure the hero is born is to sacrifice a soul. It all sounds very dark and creepy, but the old lady doesn't explain any more before vanishing into the ether. Well, that's helpful. When Éileanna emerges from the tent, she's clearly shaken. She can't even remember getting up and walking out of the tent. The old lady must have been playing tricks on her again. Upon her return home, Éileanna searches the library, hoping to shed some light on the incredibly vague warnings the prophet gave her, but there's only one book relevant. One that mentions evil creatures that are neither human nor monster and come from the demon realm. Yep, that sounds like the Bill, right? The king of the creatures. It's called the Demon King, the one the hero could one day stab through the heart if only she can figure out how to make sure he's born. In other words, in order to stop the world from ending, they have to kill the Demon King. Elena's first thought is that she can just do the damn thing herself, but she doesn't know how to get to the demon realm. And even if she did, there's no guarantee it could even be killed by someone other than the hero. Exhausted and frustrated, Éileanna switched tactics. She summoned Albert the butler, inquiring into the Duke Maid to see if he had already had a wife. Apparently, he was in negotiations with the Linden family, in particular, a Lady Miel who is actually Elena's cousin. This could get messy. Éileanna stormed right into Miel's house and immediately asked if she was negotiating marriage with the Duke. Probably not the most subtle way to approach the problem, but whatever works, I guess. It turns out Miel isn't happy about the marriage. Her father is effectively selling her off since the Duke is incredibly rich and will pay well for her dowie. Éileanna is sympathetic for her cousin, but she's also pleased since a marriage means they will also have kids too. Right, well, actually wrong, although the Duke is young and rich. He's infamous for carrying the ancient curse of the devil, a mark he wears on his face that makes everyone see him as a monster. So it's not a surprise that says she would rather die than have his children. Oh dear, looks like it's back to square one for Éileanna. No one really knows why the Duke was cursed with markings, but he's had them since he was born. His parents tried everything to get rid of it, but nothing ever changed. The nobility began to suspect it was proof of a curse by some demon. It was only a rumor at the time, but then someone found an old book with a pattern of the devil that looked close enough to the Duke's. After that, no one would hear any different. Duke Maid was cursed without a doubt. Miel asks Selena if she would dare start a family with a man like that, but she doesn't see the problem. Miel yells back that it's not the curse that concerns her, just his ugly face. Ouch, little harsh there. Miel. She's also worried that the mark could be contagious, which makes no sense at all. Either way, she refuses to bear a child for the Duke, point blank. And if that wasn't bad enough, she also wants to bring her lover, the knight, to her new estate when she moves. Now I can see why there's no child destined to be born in this timeline. Miel is absolutely determined to ignore her future husband in every single aspect. Faced with the end of the world weighing on her shoulders, Éileanna asks her cousin to let her marry the Duke instead. It seems like Miel would be absolutely delighted at the idea, and so was her father. He didn't really want to send his daughter to a Duke known as a monster, so when Éileanna decided to step in, he didn't protest much. Éileanna sends a letter to the Duke asking to change his bride from Lady Mel to Éileanna Sorta, and soon receives a reply, no problem. It seems like everything is sorted. The only people left to convince are her family, who are rightfully shocked that she would choose to marry a man like Duke Maid. Luckily, the Duke agreed to a condition for their marriage which allows her half the profits from his mining business once her father hears that he understands that this will benefit the family. And Elena puts on a good show of being the daughter-in-law with an outcast, so he agrees on her wedding day. Elena isn't exactly the blushing bride-in-love, but considering that the fate of the entire world is on the line, she considers this a small price to pay and is happy to sacrifice her marriage for the sake of those she loves, looking resplendent in her pure white wedding gown. Her servants open the doors to reveal Duke Kaimaya standing by the altar wearing a mask. Although his face is covered, his eyes stand out. They're such a deep blue that Elena thinks at first that she has fallen into the ocean. Well. Maybe there is a chance for love after. Oh, her father walks her down the aisle, leading her toward this mysterious and slightly intimidating man who has, for some reason, decided to wear all black for his wedding day. She can't stop staring at his beautiful eyes. Miel, who ended up as a bridesmaid, even warns her to stop. It's starting to look rude. The Duke reaches out a hand, taking Elena from her father and moving both of them in front of the priest. As the service goes on, Elena starts to notice all the attractive things about him. His hands are large. He's nice and tall. And beneath the finery, it seems like he has pretty good physique. When it comes to say their vows, Elena can't help but feel a little sad. It's so romantic to promise that they will love and cherish one another, but in the end, it's just a formality. When the ceremony is finished, Miel runs out to cry on her shoulder, thanking her for saving her from a fate she considered worse than death. Her father, too, is thankful, but Elena just tells him she wanted to get married. Obviously, that's not the whole story, but she can't be honest in case the Duke overhears her. Her brother is very suspicious of her choice, telling her she won't be able to do any of the things she loves anymore. He asks if she's happy, a question which Elena kind of just avoids. Then her sister shoves him out of the way. She grabs her sister and tells her that she can always come to her if there are ever any problems. It's a very touching moment until the siblings ruin it by screaming at each other like usual for potential heirs. They really do act like children, don't they, saying goodbye to her father. Elena thanks him for raising her and asks him to live well. Damn, this is getting really emotional all of a sudden, considering the future might still play out how she saw it. There's a good chance he might die in 10 years and her siblings in 15. It's an agonizing fate. She knows how to save the world, but not her own family. Plus, that old hag seems to have vanished for good, so there's no chance of asking her for more clues. Now, she just has to focus on her main mission, getting pregnant. Riding back to his estate with the Duke gives Elena a good chance to assess his features. Those eyes are still just as captivating as they were in the church. She's staring at him so long that he tells her not to worry. He's not going to take off his mask in the carriage. I guess he thinks she's afraid of him. He doesn't seem to realize that she's actually eyeing him up like a piece of man candy. The rest of the carriage ride is about as awkward as you'd expect. After a week of traveling, they arrive at the Mayhem mansion where she is bathed in rose petals by a pair of maids. Not bad for her first day of married life, once she's out of the tub. However, Elena is overcome by nerves about her first time. Spotting some wine by the side of the table, she pours herself a glass and downs it all in one go. She stayed up all night waiting for the Duke to come to bed, but he never showed. She was so exhausted that she slept until noon. Apparently, the maids had orders from her husband not to wake her since she needed to rest after the long journey. At first, Elena feels a bit insulted that her husband didn't share a bed with her on their first night. She asks the maid to take her to him, but the Duke isn't in the mansion. There are monsters prowling all night through the territory, which explains why he didn't come home. This reassures Elena. After all, the Duke's territory is fertile, but famous for the occasional monster attack, especially in the areas near the mountains. When he first took over as Duke, the 16-year-old Kai led an expedition to the heart of the monster's den in the dead of winter and slaughtered all the beasts they could find. Since then, the territory has been relatively peaceful, but the occasional mishaps do still happen. In the meantime, his territory has become prosperous, and all the citizens live much better lives. Elena thinks that all this is a sign of a very proficient Duke, one who should be praised rather than treated like a monster, but she can't get any closer to him while he's out doing his duty. So she decides to spend her first day exploring her new home and introducing herself to her people. The staff line up in the main hall to make their introductions to their new Lady Ben. The butler is first, then the head maid, Lula, and then the head chef, who is hilariously named Cooker. The head gardener seems the youngest and the most nervous. His name is Gardner. Right, of course it is. The garden is a point of pride for the Duke, who has hired more than 10 gardeners and is particularly fond of the East Garden. As Ben the butler reveals, Éileana then introduces herself as the new mistress of the mansion and asks for their support in the future. She spent the rest of the day exploring the mansion, which took a long time since it's so huge. By the end of the day, she's exhausted but refuses to fall asleep in case the Duke comes back. Although he has returned from hunting monsters, he doesn't make a visit by morning. Éileana is starting to get frustrated somehow. A whole week passes without her seeing his face even once. It really seems like the Duke is avoiding her for some reason. So she walks up to a pair of maids to try and get some answers. They already seem very taken with her new mistress and are actually excited to tell her that the Duke won't seek her. Out now or in the future? Wait, what? Apparently, they told him that Éileana has fallen sick, so he's been staying away until she feels better. I guess they thought they were doing her a favor, but one look at Elena's face tells them. Otherwise, they drop to the ground on their knees at once. Of course, if Miel had married the Duke, then she would be hugging and thanking these maids, right? No, but Elena is different. She doesn't have a week to waste. The whole world is at stake here, literally. Elena asked the butler how harsh she could be with her maids, and he tells her that the maximum sentence in this territory is cutting. Out of tongue, yikes. She settles for a few rounds of beating and a couple of days of starvation. Surprising Lula, the head maid with her, cruelty, once they've been dragged away by their ears. She asked Ben to lead her to the Duke, who is currently in the library. Finally, she might be able to make some progress with her mission. The Duke is writing at a desk, but he hears her coming a long way off. For once, he isn't wearing his special mask. When Elena sees his real face for the first time, she stops dead in her tracks, staring straight at him. Then she frowns and walks right up to the desk to get a closer look. His markings really don't look that ominous. Definitely nothing like the devil's curse from the rumors. She reaches out to touch them, causing him to flinch. Elena apologized because, well, it is a bit weird to randomly reach out and touch someone's face without warning. Once he gives her permission, she caresses his cheek, thinking that his skin is remarkably smooth. I'm telling you guys, this girl is down bad. Suddenly remembering her manner, she snatches her hand back and starts to explain the whole situation with the maids. The Duke is already hurt, although I don't know how since it happened literally 5 minutes ago. Elena says she isn't ill, but she has had trouble sleeping for the past few days. Since she stays up all night waiting for him to join her, she's very bold and tells him straight up that she doesn't want to sleep alone. Tonight, she promises to wait for him again, hoping that this time he'll actually pay her a visit then before she can get embarrassed. Elena storms from the library and back to her own quarters. She tells a maid to run a bath for her, no longer interested in beautiful petals or lotions now that she's felt how soft the Duke's skin is. Maybe that's the real reason he wears a mask, to protect his precious skin. Waiting for the bath, Elena pours herself a cup of tea to calm her nerves. Night is a long way off, but already she's nervous at the prospect of Kai joining her in the bedroom. And there's the added pressure of the whole saving the world thing, too. That night, Elena is true to her word and wakes up in bed, eventually. The Duke makes his appearance silently, opening the door and asking why she seems so nervous. Because you guys are married and it's your first night? Come on, Kai, get with the program. Elena tells him everything is fine, trying not to notice just how tall he is. While he walks over to the bed, she also catches a glimpse of his chest while he's climbing onto the sheets. Like I said, she's down bad. He's still in his work clothes and seems a bit surprised that she hasn't run away yet. He asks if she's really determined for them to sleep together, and Elena says, of course, they're husband and wife after all. Who else would she sleep with? The Duke doesn't really react to that. He just goes to turn off the lights. Elena dimmed them on purpose to set the mood, but clearly he isn't interested in all that. She stops him just as he's reaching over and asks if he's going to take off his clothes. Whether he's shy or just doesn't like her, I don't know. But for some reason, the Duke says he prefers to keep a shirt and trousers on. Thank you very much. What's this guy's problem? She's a beautiful woman and she's his wife. Why is he holding back? The situation only sinks in when Kai rolls over and lays down on the pillow, well and truly proving he wants nothing to do with her. Not in that way. Anyway, he falls asleep in literally seconds, leaving Elena shocked on the pillow beside him. After that disappointment comes another the next morning. When she wakes up, her husband is already gone, though his spot on the bed is still a little warm. Reluctantly, Elena gets up and gets dressed. The maid asks if she'd like to have breakfast in the dining room, and she agrees, probably expecting Kai to be there too. But as you might have guessed, the Duke isn't there. He's a real workaholic and often only takes something small to eat in his office before starting work for the day. Damn. I can see now why she had to get so creative in the first chapter. Elena sits down to a silent and rather lonely breakfast, recounting how one of her friends, a countess, only had her first night with her husband after 2 months of marriage, and maybe it's not so unusual that he's been avoiding her. But of course, her situation isn't like anyone else's. She doesn't have time to be messing around, and besides, it's probably pretty dull just walking around in that big mansion by herself. Night falls, and again, the Duke comes to her bedroom. This time, he actually strikes up a conversation, which gives Elena hope that he might finally be interested in you-know-what. Elena assures him she's not tired at all, which makes the Duke smile. He just takes it as a sign that she slept well last night and hopes she gets just as much rest today, too. Oh, come on. With that, he does his usual tuck and roll and is off again in minutes. The day after is exactly the same, so is the next and the next after that, by 3 days later. Elena is thoroughly fed up. She's not going to be waiting 2 months. Like the Countess the next night, she drinks some wine before bed, hoping it will give her the courage to speak up. She asks him if he plans to carry this, never doing anything with each. Brother Kai is surprised, but he tells her not to worry about that sort of thing. Even though she's his wife, he promises to never touch her, not even a finger. Oh, good Lord, I don't know how. Elena hasn't lost it yet. If it were me, I think I'd have beaten him around the head at this point. The truth is, the idea of marriage and everything that comes with it is foreign to Elena, the matron in charge of her education even. left the subject blank, telling her to leave everything to her husband. So what the heck is she supposed to do when the husband won't lift a finger to her? Credit, Eleanor creatively asks if she can touch him instead. And then she not so subtly tries to force his shirt off. Yep, there it is. She's finally lost her patience. The Duke starts freaking out, trying to stop her while Eleanor consistently yells at him to take off his clothes since she seems to be having such a hard time trying to do it herself. Oh God, it's too awkward. I can't watch. The poor Duke is getting flustered. He has no idea why his wife is sitting on top of him, screaming to take off his shirt. But instead of maybe asking her a question or telling her to calm down, he just grabs the blanket and wraps his arms around her, holding her tight in his embrace. He tells her to stay still and sleep even as she's trying to wriggle free on top of him. She resists for a little while, but eventually she falls asleep. And who could blame her? It looks pretty comfy up there. The next morning, Éileana is humiliated. She even contemplates smashing her face into her wash bowl to drown herself. But then, who would save the world? Her maid asks if anything is a matter. Leaving Éileana? Confused, she doesn't even know where to begin. Of course, she only acted that way because of the wine. The last time she drank so much was with her brother when she was just 15 years old and Edward only 18. Chaos ensued, and the next day, Edward declared she should never drink again. She must have been a real liability. Ever since then, she's tried to drink as moderately as possible. Well, excluding. Last night, embarrassed, Éileana dunks her whole head in the water bowl and asks her mate to bring a new one as cold as possible. Humiliation and a hangover. What a horrible combination. She decides to take breakfast in the reading lounge of her chambers and requests that lunch and dinner be brought there, too. The maid is a little taken back, but agrees. In a moment of insecurity, Éileana asks her maid if she's not beautiful and demanding her honest opinion. So far, that's the only reason she can think of that the Duke would be so determined not to touch her. But the maid confirms that she's very attractive, and so is her personality. Damn right, girl. Don't let that man make you doubt yourself. The maid gives a whole speech about how divine her features are, going on and on about her beautiful skin, her silver hair, her petite face, and even her forehead, which is apparently just the right size. The maid even goes so far as to declare that no man in the whole wide world could look at her and think she isn't beautiful. Even the Duke, which is probably true, but then why is he rejecting her instilled with a new sense of confidence? Éileana tells Abby, the maid, to request a lunch with the Duke. Actually, it's more like an order. The Duke agrees to come to lunch, not that he had much of a choice, where they're served a beautiful spread of food at opposite ends of a very long table. Seriously, how much more awkward can things get? They both look a little uncomfortable, seeing as they can't even make eye contact from that far apart. But then the Duke makes an effort to chat, asking about her body. I guess what he means to say is, are you over? But at least he put it politely. Éileana assures him she's fine and thanks him for his concern. The Duke expresses his relief to hear that she's in good condition, and they're back to square one again. Every time she looks at him, she remembers the humiliation of trying to rip his clothes off last night, but she also remembers how handsome he looked while he was sleeping and how strong his arms felt holding her against him, the same strong arms which are currently laid on the table. This girl is so easily aroused, and the Duke tells Ben, the butler, to send everyone out of the dining room, suddenly leaving them alone together. Then he asks if last night was just because of the alcohol, or does she genuinely want to be with him? Éileana is delighted at the opportunity for a second chance and says yes, she genuinely is interested in her husband. So she apologizes, unable to hide the blush creeping over her cheeks. Kai puts her at ease about it, but he points out that they've only been married for 3 weeks. Wait, does he think that's not a long time, dude? Most people have their first night the same day as the wedding. Éileana forces herself to admit that she's not a patient person and asks how much longer she's supposed to wait. The Duke seems a little sad after that and asks if the house is really in need of an heir. Does he not want to carry on his bloodline? He briefly asks about her siblings, wondering if perhaps she's concerned that her own family name could be in danger. Éileana assures him that everyone is perfectly healthy. That's not the problem. This leaves the Duke quite confused, and he even asks if there was anything in the contract about having kids. Oh my God, can't he understand that it's perfectly normal to want a family of your own, even if their marriage was technically a business contract? They don't have to treat each other so coldly. Kai is genuinely curious as to why she wants to be with him, but she just reminds him that they're husband and wife. That's what married couples do, of course. She can't mention the prophecy about their child saving the world. He'd probably think she's insane. The Duke hangs his head and says he can't give her what she wants, not just about kids. He doesn't want to have a first night at all. He reassures Éileana that it's nothing to do with her and even kind of admits that he's attracted to her. As an apology, he offers her anything else, anything at all except a night with him. Éileana wants nothing except the chance to save the world, and clearly the Duke is determined in his resolution, so that leaves his wife no choice. If he refuses to do anything, she'll do it herself. Oh, God, I think we all know where this is going. Being the innocent girl that she is, Éileana heads straight to the library to try and figure out a way to seduce him. She finds a trilogy of books titled The World of Husband and Wife, which is aimed specifically at improving the relationship of married couples, if you get the hint. Checking that there's no one around, she starts reading it at once. The next day, her maid enters her, chambers to find the lady exhausted from a whole night of reading. She finished 5 books just in that one night. Clearly, Éileanna is not the type who can survive on little sleep, which is honestly very relatable. She intends to have a shower and wash up, but ends up passing out on her bed and snoozing in a chair after that. She accidentally falls asleep and slams her head on the desk, summoning one of her maids, who storms in at once. Great. So now not only is she embarrassed and sleep deprived, but also injured. I hope she doesn't meet the Duke in this condition. Speak of the devil. Éileanna is just thinking of Kai when she gets a sudden brainwave. After all, she didn't stay up doing the reading for nothing, not caring about the giant bump on her face. She slams open the doors to the Duke's study and asks for a moment of his time. After getting over the initial shock of her arrival, the Duke says yes, he does have time and asks what she needs. Éileanna announces that she has come to take him up on his offer. Yesterday he said he'll agree to anything else as long as it isn't a husband-wife relationship. So today she asks him to accept her presents, to not send her away, and then asks for the servants to leave them alone. Ooh, something tells me things are going to get steamy in the library. At the Duke's orders, the servants leave the room. Now that they've got some privacy at last, Éileanna can put to use some of those new tricks she's learned from her books. At first, she sits on his desk, smiling coyly at him as she crosses her legs and asks him what's up. Is that her big move? Oh dear, this is going to be worse than I thought, as if that wasn't weird enough. This is actually a tactic she's used on her brother before. There was a time when they were having an argument, Edward and Éileanna, and he told her to get off his desk and stop acting like a little girl. She refused to get down until he admitted she was right, and it worked. So I guess she's hoping that if she's stubborn enough, the Duke will just give in. Anyone else have a feeling? This is not going to work. The first sign of disaster is that he has no reaction to her acting cute. The second is that he can't stop staring at the bump on her head, which has grown absolutely massive by now, trying to act flirty. Éileanna tells him not to worry about the table. She's light enough that it won't break. Kai just says he knows, obviously, because he lifted her up and held her on his chest the other night. But Éileanna pushes on, playing with her shoes as she asks him to praise her. For example, he could tell her how beautiful she is, although with that huge growth on her face, it's probably not the best day to say it. After a little convincing, the Duke tells Éileanna she's beautiful with enough sincerity that it catches his wife off guard. She slips on the desk, which ends up being kind of a genius move when her husband catches her midair with one hand around her waist. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Éileanna tries to recover herself, hopping back on the desk a little flustered and asking him to continue with his compliments. He lists off her features somewhat reluctantly and with less than half the enthusiasm of Abby the maid. But a compliment is a compliment, I guess, and he does say something a bit more original about her fingers being pretty. Éileanna gives up and tells him that's enough. But while they're sitting in more awkward silence, she takes a silent inventory of his own handsome features, including his nose and deep blue eyes. She ends up right in front of him and even calls him handsome out loud. Uh-oh, here we go again. Desperate to regain some confidence, Éileanna asks him to call her by name, which he does obediently from now on. She asks him to always call her by name when they're together. With that, she walks off, thanking him for his time like it's some kind of business meeting. She also tells him there's no need to come to the bedroom anymore since that plan clearly wasn't working. And then, like any humiliated young girl, she runs back to her bedroom to hide under the covers. It's only when a maid comes in with a special ointment sent by the Duke that she notices how big her bump has got and smashes a mirror in her fury. Yep, that's our relatable queen, all right. The discovery of the bump leads to a roller coaster of emotions for our little Duchess. First, she is frustrated, then self-deprecating, exhausted and moody. On the 5th day, after her death seduction scheme, Éileanna comes to a state of acceptance, mostly because the bump has finally healed. At night, she wanders into the hallway with a lantern, catching the eye of one of the guards. When she tells him she's having trouble sleeping, he offers to accompany her on a walk. But Éileanna refuses and says she'll only walk to the end of the hallway and back. Obviously, that's not true because today, now that she's back at full strength, Éileanna plans to begin phase 2 of the seduction scheme. After thinking about it like a battle plan, she realized the most obvious advantage is the element of surprise, making a night attack far more likely to succeed if she can catch him off guard. And since she basically stayed in her room for 5 days, the Duke probably thinks she's calmed down by now. She deliberately made an effort to seem less bothered around him, but if Kai thinks his new wife has eased into her life of a solitude, he would be poorly mistaken. She sneaks into his bedroom, shutting the door quietly behind her and walking to his bed. Now we return to a familiar scene, Éileanna standing over the Duke, while he sleeps soundly in bed without any hesitation. She clambers up on the bed and, well, we know the rest. On the first attempt, she was wrapped up in a blanket. The second day was the sheets. She didn't even bother on the 3rd day, knowing the outcome would just be the same anyway. It leaves Éileanna frustrated. She even contemplates telling him about the prophecy to get him to sleep with her. Yeah, somehow I don't think that would go down too well. The only thing that might add some credibility to the prophecy is if she had the old lady there to explain it herself. That gives Éileanna the idea to try and paint her likeness from memory so that they can hunt her down again. But then a bee appears in front of her, face and shocks her so much that she trips backward. Well, that was random. But not as random as the gorgeous blonde. Who catches her? Who is this handsome man? He asks if she's okay, gently, pulling her upright as Éileanna tries not to shiver from his touch. He clearly knows who she is and introduces himself as Incan Marzon. That rings a bell in her head. He must be the second son of the Viscount Marzon, who visits the Duke often to bring medicinal herbs. It turns out that's the reason he came to visit this time. He always brings the herbs himself despite the long journey. He's going to be staying in the city for a few days, so I'm sure they'll bump into one another again. But for some reason, Éileanna doesn't seem like she wants to. Something about that guy gave her a chill, literally. When she returns to her chambers, Éileanna asks Abby the maid if she knows anything about Incan M-Zone. She ends up being something of a superfan, but as we know already, Abby doesn't do anything. Half-heartedly, she pulls up a portrait of the man, conveying every available detail about his life as if it was a class presentation project. He's 27A, middle child, and currently unmarried. Éileanna assumes he must be a bit of a flirt if he's not found a wife, but actually that's not the case. He has a very good reputation among nobles and servants alike, as he's known to treat his subordinates well. He gave up the position of successor, stepping aside to allow his sister Rebecca to take the role of head of the family. So then why did Éileanna get such a bad feeling when he touched her? She even asked Abby to touch the same spot, trying to recreate the sensation with little success. Then she wonders if it was only because Incan is a boy. In that case, she needs a more accurate subject for her experiment. I think we all know where this is going. Éileanna arrives at the Duke's study, interrupting what is probably very important business to awkwardly ask if she can borrow his hand. Like any normal person, the Duke is taken aback, but he offers it to her. Anyhow, allowing Éileanna to take it in. Hers. The Duke obviously feels a little flutter, but his wife feels nothing. Although she does enjoy how soft his hands are, despite a few calluses from all the sword fighting he must do. He's got the perfect physique for it, too. Long limbs, strong muscles, big hands. Éileanna's in Fantasyland again. So easy to distract her. She suddenly lets go of his hand, mumbling something about finding it. Interesting how different their bodies are. As a demonstration, she holds his hand up against hers, leading to another moment of uncomfortable silence where they refuse to make eye contact. Forget getting him into bed. Éileanna, if this is how he reacts every time you touch him, there's no hope for saving the world. But while Kai is a little thrown, Éileanna is completely unashamed and sticks her arm out for him next, asking him to touch her bicep when he gives her a funny look. She reminds him of the promise he made to give her everything she wants, except a romantic relationship, of course. So the Duke gently squeezes her arm, and again, she feels nothing. Actually, that's not true. But it sure as heck isn't the same thing she felt with Inks and Marzona. And she's satisfied. The Duke immediately slides away, so she thanks him for his time and takes her leave, not noticing the blush on her husband's cheeks. Is that the real reason he won't do anything with her? Because he's just super shy? For Éileanna, at least. That mini investigation turned up nothing. She's on her way to grab a bite to eat when she overhears the maids talking about a criminal. Her first thought is that they must be talking about Incan, especially since they mentioned that the criminal had a good reputation. Whoever they're talking about is really bad news. They turned out to be a human trafficker, and the only reason they suspected anything was because they bumped into the guy and got goosebumps. I guess people in these parts take goosebumps really seriously. One of the maids even goes so far as to tell her friend that goosebumps are always a sign that a woman should run. How creepy is that Éileanna is thinking over their words, standing shocked in the hallway, while she tries to figure out what she should do. At just that moment, the man of the hour appears right over her shoulder. That would creep me out too. He plays the role of a perfect innocent, apologizing for startling her and even flashing some puppy eyes for show. Éileanna tries to act normal, although as we know, by now she's not very good at hiding her facial expressions. He asks if she was on her way to the dining room, and when Éileanna reluctantly says yes, he perks up and asks if they can go together, ignoring the ancient female instinct to run in the opposite direction, as she politely declines with the excuse that she's not hungry. She politely excuses herself before Incan can make any more attempts to get friendly, wandering down the halls while her brain runs a mile a minute. Later that day, while she's eating with the Duke, she asks how long their guest is staying. Her husband reports that the herb exchange is already complete, so he'll be leaving soon. But that sparks another suspicion in Éileanna's mind. What if he's tampered with the herbs? She doesn't think of her own health, but those of her staff and also the Duke's reputation, which is bad enough to begin with. Kai can see her hand shaking and asks if something is wrong. Meanwhile, she's having a fantasy about saving the Déchet from a potential villain and being rewarded with, well, you can guess. What? So she says she's fine, barely hiding a burning determination for revenging after their meal. Éileanna tasks her maid Abby with secretly investigating Ink and Marzone, and she wants to know everything. Rumors, relationships, his day-to-day, all of it. She also hands over a portrait of the old prophet lady, ordering the staff to find this woman, whatever the cost. As per usual, Abby doesn't question anything. She just agrees and runs off to do her job right away. That evening, Éileanna makes the surprising move to have dinner with Incan alone. She claims it's just her duty as mistress of the manor and also says he's helped her in some suspicious way. But Incan doesn't suspect a thing. even when she plainly states that the Duke won't be attending this dinner. Elena asks if he's sad because the Duke isn't here. But Incan seems perfectly fine and just keeps smiling his golden retriever. Smile. I wonder if he really is a villain or if this is all one big misunderstanding. The maid drops a cup that she was about to present him, and Incan immediately apologizes to her and attempts to clear it up himself. That's not something just anyone would do. Most nobles would ignore the servant and go on with their meal. His kindness makes the maids blush, but with every sign of innocence. And Elena only becomes more and more suspicious as he sits back down again. Ingen compliments the chef, saying the food gets better every time he visits. Talking about food makes the Duchess drop her guard, blabbing about how good the meat and desserts are. She also mentions that the gardener is very skilled, so Incan suggests that they take a walk after they finish eating. She agrees, and soon the unlikely pair are strolling through the grounds together, finally. Time for some real investigation. Elena asks about his herb delivery. Since he lives so far away, it would surely be inconvenient to travel long distance as often as he does, but Incan doesn't seem to mind it. Actually, he likes coming to deliver herbs to the Duchess, since herbs are something everyone needs, something that can save lives. It makes him feel responsible to be in charge of delivering such important things. Okay, is anyone else starting to get the feeling that he's really a good guy? He's kind of a sweetheart. Elena is still sus, but she assures him that his work is very meaningful and he must be very kind, although her expression says the total opposite. Then, out of nowhere, the same bee from earlier flies in front of her face and trips her over, and just like last time, Incan catches her midair. She gets the same shiver again, but this time, even she's starting to question her own instincts. She's still feeling around her arm when Abby returns and reports that she couldn't find anything suspicious about their visitor. However, she did find out that a servant from the Muslim mansion quit their job after only 2 months with the family. That in itself isn't unusual, but when she looks closer at their own house records, she realizes that the number of servants quitting their jobs has increased ever since. Incan began delivering herbs around 3 years ago. Elena summons the head maid, Lula, and asks her for an explanation. Why did these servants quit after working at the estate? Lula hadn't thought of it before, but suddenly occurs to her that all the maids listed have the same reason for quitting. Some kind of emergency demanded they return to their hometowns. She summons the maids who were closest to those who quit, and one of them mentioned something weird that she noticed at this time. The maids who quit seemed to be in pain and even gagged while mumbling the word impossible. Well, that's pretty sinister. The other maids back up her story and say they often heard similar expressions. Like, that's ridiculous as well, but no one knows why or what happened to them after they left, which is kind of concerning, actually. If you saw people being sick and muttering creepy things, wouldn't you tell somebody? Anyway, that's the most Elena can get out of them. So she sends the maids back to their posts. Now, she's even more confused than before. She has lots of information and more questions than she can answer. So she goes back for round 2 of her investigation, approaching Incan the next day with a basket of some very expensive wine and an excuse that she wants to talk her troubles away with him. He accepts at once, welcoming her inside his quarters. With a slightly surprised look, he points out that it's a little early in the day to be drinking, especially when Elena is closing the curtain and trying to make the atmosphere a little more intimate. She claims it's hard for her to open up without alcohol, which is kind of a concerning statement in itself. And then also says she likes to drink in the dark. Our girl's kind of coming off as a weirdo right now, but Incan is too polite to say anything about her strange choices. The two sit down while Elena brings out 2 glasses and the first bottle of expensive wine. She claims there's nothing super special that she wanted to talk about. She just doesn't want the Duke to hear it. And then she pours herself the biggest glass in existence, glaring at him while Incan starts to sweat. Since he's the only foreigner in this territory, she assumes he must have kept his fair share of secrets. Reluctantly, Incan admits that she's right and takes a big gulp of his wine. He finishes his glass and promises that whatever Elena tells him will not be shared with anyone else. I guess her tactic is to get him drunk enough to open up in front of her. The only problem is that the wine is really strong, and as we've seen before, our little Duchess isn't the best at handling her liquor. That's why she pours some out on her handkerchief instead of drinking and fills their glasses up again and again in less than 10 minutes. Incan is a babbling wreck. Fortunately, she has managed to avoid getting drunk herself before she can start asking the big questions. She covers her intentions with some general conversation about marital life, complaining about the lack of children in her life. She was just saying something for the sake of it, but Incan suddenly tells her he can solve this problem and asks what she will give him. In return, Elena effectively says she'll give him anything, so he reveals that he has a special kind of medicine, one that will get her pregnant. Oh, here we go. This sounds suspicious. Heck. Blushing and smiling a little creepily, Incan says that she can still get pregnant even without having sex. This suddenly catches Elena's attention, and she spills her wine in shock. After all, that's biologically impossible. Incan points out the wine is now dripping all over the carpet, but Elena is too intrigued to care. She demands he explain himself, so he tells her it's true. If she takes the special pill, she can get pregnant immediately. That must have been why those women were gagging and saying impossible to themselves, because they didn't believe it was true. It sounds like it could be the perfect Solution for Éileana until he insults her. Husband Incan acts sympathetic, assuming that she wants a child but doesn't want to have a baby with a monster like the Duke. It seems like Incan's mother had a very big influence on him, convincing him from a young age that women are at a disadvantage in this world and that even her own son would grow up to be trash, just like his father. Well, she's not exactly wrong, but that's a little harsh. To tell your own kid the next day, she apologized and held him close. Incan loved his mother despite the madness. That slowly took her help until she was barely a shell of her former self, ever. Since then, he has been determined to find a way to give women freedom by allowing them to have children all on their own without relying on horrible men. Éileana, ignoring the crazy look in his eye and the evil things he said about the Duke, asks if he already tested it on other people. He confesses that he did indeed give the pill to 3 maids, all of whom were virgins, and came from very faraway places. Now Éileana has the proof she needed. She gets up from her chair and tells him she'll think about it. As she's trying to leave, Incan reaches out and grabs her hand, asking about his reward. He wants to give her the pill immediately so that he can get something in return. She says he's drunk and that she'll talk to him when he's sobered up. So he just takes a potion and is back to normal straight away. Freaky, but even freakier is what he says next. The only reward he wants is her. Éileana, from the moment they first met, he was taken with her and thought she felt the same. While he stayed at their estate, he kept thinking, what a waste it would be for a beauty like her to fall into the hands of a monster like the Duke. Wow, he's really showing his true colours now. Éileana can't stand it anymore, and she gives him a kick to the stomach and starts beating Incan, telling him not to call her husband a monster and yelling all kinds of curse words at him. You go, girl, defend your... And suddenly, Incan catches her mid-swing and tells her to take back the curses she called him. Things are looking rough for Éileana until suddenly the doors to the chamber swing open and in storm the guards and Abby. It turns out the bracelet she's wearing is a matching pair with Abby's. She used it to alert the attention of her maid. So she grabbed the men and got moving as soon as she received the signal. Incan is taken to the dungeons, but somehow he has the arrogance to act like he did nothing wrong. He claims there's no evidence that the maids didn't consent to trying the medicine. He didn't even specify that they were maids from the Duke's estate. Éileana was so close to having all the evidence to putting him behind bars, but still, they've come up just short. Luckily, the Duke is involved now and has some tricks up his sleeve. He summoned the house doctor, who quit just a few months ago, and he confessed that the maids who had quit were in fact pregnant and also virgins. He had been bribed by the Mazzoni family to tell the maids they were cursed, instead of revealing the truth, that they were guinea pigs for Incan's little experiment. The doctor also used the Duke's own reputation to cover up the truth, spreading even more rumours about him among the nobility and the commoners. What a mess. And no one had any idea this was going on. The doctor, in accordance with the punishment of the land, had his tongue and hands cut off. Incan is still being interrogated, but the evidence is piled up against him. They're sure he'll confess soon enough, but the only reason they could reveal the truth is because husband and wife work together as a team. So the next time Éileana sees the Duke, she demands a private conversation and drags him away at once. Once they're behind closed doors, she asks him straight up, is the reason he won't sleep with her in any way related to certain rumours about the Duke's abilities? Oh, we're really in the thick of things now. Late at night, Kai tends to Elena's bruise at her request, his touch careful and unexpectedly gentle. The plan may have failed again, but at least the treatment itself feels sincere. Éileana notices the roughness of his hands and asks about it, curious rather than suspicious. Kai explains that he started sword training at a very young age. The fencer catches Éileana off guard and she can't help picturing a much smaller Kai, struggling with an oversized sword. She giggles, then starts rambling, clearly interested in learning more about his past. Kai only offers a shy smile, quietly enduring her sudden enthusiasm, while Éileana hurriedly tries to smooth over her own awkwardness. These two are terrible at hiding their reactions. Not ready to give up, Éileana lightly nudges the mood again, dropping subtle hints and leaning into her charms. Kai, unfazed, cuts the attempt short by turning off the lamp. Poor Éileana, your husband is good at avoiding your temptation. Defeated for the night, Éileana gives up and lets her thoughts drift elsewhere, settling on Incan, suspicious. Experiment. The topic alone seems to keep her restless. Kai overhears her, murmuring, and shares what he learned. From Incan's interrogation, he suggests that tracing the origin of the drug might be the key to understanding everything. Éileana, already exhausted, responds with a flurry of half-formed questions before her voice trails off. Sleep quickly claims her. As Éileana rests, Kai remains awake, troubled by her concern, wanting answers. He activates the magical bee to listen in on the earlier conversation between Éileana and Incan that night elsewhere in the forest. Incan is escorted out of the Empire, eager to put distance between himself and Imperial custody. The journey is cut short when the escorts suddenly stop, their screams echoing through the trees. A monster strikes without warning, tearing through the guards and shattering the carriage. Left unprotected, Incan's pleas ring out as the forest descends into chaos. Whatever secrets he carried, they may not survive the night the next day. Noble women gather for tea, exchanging gossip with practiced elegance. The Atmosphere buzzes as familiar names resurface, and soon enough, the conversation turns to Incan. Madame Kashif casually mentions that Incan suffered an accident on the road, claiming a monster attack caused the disturbance. The table reacts instantly, voices overlapping as everyone demands more details. No matter what universe, gossip is life. Shock spreads when she adds that both his escort and charioteer disappeared. Entirely, the women glance at one another, already imagining the worst. Madame Kashif smooths the tension by assuring them Incan survived. Relief settles in, though the interest only sharpens. She then explains that the monster attacked because Incan concealed rare herbs in an inappropriate place, which apparently attracted the creature. The table falls silent before erupting in disbelief, an explanation no one could have predicted. When questioned about her sources, Madame Kashif laughs softly and hints at having connections. Everywhere, the women praise her. Inside, eager, she continues, tarnishing Incan's already fragile reputation back in the Empire. Éileanna pulls Abby into a tight hug after hearing Incan has been demoted to a eunuch as she dances around her room, barely containing her excitement. Justice tastes sweet today. On her way to Kai's office, Éileanna stops an unfamiliar escort and questions him without hesitation. Haste introduces himself and expresses gratitude for finally serving someone kind. Éileanna accepts his sincerity and moves on. Kai appears just as she reaches his office and suggests a walk. They stroll together before settling on a bench, where Kai timidly begins asking questions. Éileanna answers openly, then grows curious herself, lost in a fond memory. She only realizes too late that her hand is resting on his thigh. She quickly apologizes, saying that she's just imagining something. She then questions why she would be afraid of spending time with him. Kai finally responds, telling Éileanna that he would never harm her or deceive her. He explains that he keeps his distance, only to spare her from the rumors surrounding his curse. Éileanna brushes it aside, saying she feels fortunate just to spend time with him. Gossip does not matter to her, even if it turns ugly. She really is fearless when it comes to him. Kai falls silent, staring at her as if unsure how to respond. He then changes the subject, admitting that he loves the East Garden. In the past, it was so overgrown that no one bothered tending it, and the paths were nearly impassable back then. Kai often hid among the thick bushes. The image makes Éileanna's chest ache as she imagines how lonely his childhood must have been. No child should feel forgotten. Kai stands and continues. Finally, speaking without restraint, he admits that the rumors never truly bothered him, but his fear lies elsewhere. He apologizes for refusing to have children, unwilling to pass on his birth arc. The honesty hits Éileanna hard, leaving her momentarily stunned. The truth is heavy, and he makes no attempt to soften it. Later in her room, Éileanna questions Abby, hoping to learn more about Kai's parents. Abby explains that they were known as generous and kind, deeply devoted to their children despite the rumors surrounding the family. Realizing the butler might know more, Éileanna seeks out Ben and asks about the former Duke and Duchess. Ben quietly apologizes and refuses to share their story, with no answers left to chase for. Now, Éileanna excuses him, her curiosity only growing. Secrets like these never stay buried forever. Éileanna remains restless, her thoughts circling back to Kai's childhood. Ben's expression lingers in her mind, clearly different from Abby's gentle explanation. That look tells her there is more left. Instead, she imagines Kai growing up neglected, learning to hide his feelings so well that he refuses to burden anyone, even future children. The thought tightens her chest. That kind of loneliness leaves marks deeper than rumors. Frustration bubbles over, and Éileanna punches the couch. She is certain Kai's child would grow into a hero. Yet, proving the rumors wrong would mean burying that child herself, something her current situation makes impossible. She collapses onto the bed, replaying her failed attempts to sway Kai. Her thoughts drift to a life where they have a child together, imagining it far too easily. She reminds herself that becoming a mother would change everything. Well, at least she'll have an amazing husband and an adorable kid. Shaking it off, Éileanna sits up and convinces herself she will raise that child well. No matter what, still, a new question nags at her. Why did Kai suddenly choose honesty now? The answer dawned on her slowly. Maybe he finally trusts her. The realization fills her with hope, warm enough to lull her into sleep. Morning arrives quickly. Abby wakes her with news that Ben has located the person Éileanna has been searching for. Éileanna rushes to Ben and stops before a closed door, steadying herself. Abby and Ben quietly leave her alone as she enters and faces a mysterious woman. Though familiar, the woman behaves differently than before. She introduces herself as a gifted elder, and Éileanna greets her politely while doubting every word. Something feels rehearsed. Without hesitation, Éileanna asks her to help Kai see the future and the disaster threatening the kingdom. The woman responds calmly, saying, "There's no point because the future cannot be changed." Éileanna reels in shock and presses the woman again for answers. The response is calm, but unsettling. The woman reminds her of an earlier message, explaining that a warrior can only be born from the bond between two souls. Éileanna pieces it together, realizing that, without genuine love, the birth itself would mean nothing. So, love is not optional after all, the woman signals the end of their conversation and turns away before Éileanna can stop her. The woman chants in an unfamiliar language, pulling Éileanna into a hazy trance. As Éileana murmurs about sacrifice. The woman instructs her to forget everything. Darkness settles in and Éileana slips into sleep. She jolts awake moments later, screaming in frustration when she realizes the woman is gone, storming. Outside, Éileana kicks a solid stone and instantly regrets it. With her foot throbbing, she collapses onto a bench to steady herself. Pain always arrives on time. At least she managed to ask about saving her family. Éileana exhales, replaying the woman's poetic answer and slowly trying to decipher its meaning. Her thoughts shift to the second problem. Love is necessary for the future hero. Éileana stares ahead, wondering what love truly is and how one is even supposed to create it. No answers come. Overwhelmed, she vents to Obby while being handed a cup of tea. The warmth helps, but only slightly. Ben soon knocks, explaining compensation matters and revealing that Kai ordered the servants to grant Éileana anything she wants. The kindness feels strange. Alarmed, Éileana jumps to her own conclusion. She rushes to Kai's office and confronts him about the divorce. Kai explains that their marriage contract may no longer serve a purpose. Éileana refuses outright, declaring she does not want to separate. Tears spill as she asks if he hates her. Kai denies it immediately and admits he believes she never wanted the marriage to begin with. Well, she did only want to marry him, just to give birth to the hero. The realization hits Éileana hard. She firmly states she will not accept a divorce, even without a child. And she refuses to abandon her resolve. Kai quietly admits he has noticed how sincerely Éileana treats him, and just like that, the distance narrows. With the tension eased, Éileana excuses herself, believing the matter is settled before she can leave. Kai stops her and offers ointment for her swollen, and only then does Éileana notice the soreness. She waves it off and reassures him she's fine, refusing to help. Despite that, the ointment still finds its way to her room later that day. Éileana sighs and lets it go. I really wish Kai would apply the ointment on her hand. Left alone, her thoughts spiral toward divorce. She replies what might have happened if it went through. Recalling the agreement between the Duke and her uncle, the conclusion stings. Kai would have suffered the most. Éileana pouts and quickly shifts gear. If love is the answer, then she will simply have to make him fall for her. Let's just hope her plan for this one will work. The next day, servants see Éileana off as she heads out to visit a friend. She arrives at a warm welcome from Rosalind, who greets her with an enthusiastic embrace. They move into the garden where several noble women are already gathered. Rosalind introduces Éileana, and the tea party begins without delay. By the end, Éileana is drained. She vents to Rosalind about enduring pointed remarks and thinly veiled judgments about her relationship with Kai. In her mind, she imagines splashing water across the table, tempting but unladylike. Rosalind asks why Éileana attended at all, knowing how unpleasant these gatherings can be. Éileana admits she needed information, and events like this were perfect for it. She dismisses every rumor about Kai and openly admits her feelings for him. Later, she thanks Rosalind, satisfied that Vic Countess deliver attended with her ties to Madame Gushiv. The message will travel fast. Suddenly, Éileana asks Rosalind for advice on love. The request stuns her friend, who immediately jumps to conclusions. Éileana turns away embarrassed, then grabs Rosalind's hand and begs her to teach her. Anyway, Rosalind finally agrees to help. After seeing Elena's determination and asks about the man Elena's trying to win, Éileana hesitates, unsure of herself. Her confidence is kind of questionable. She carefully describes Kai, noting his habits, demeanor, and quiet kindness. Rosalind listens slowly, realizing he sounds unusually gentle and well-loved. Then Éileana admits it's Kai. Rosalind freezes. Girl, of course she'd be seducing her husband. She badly needs that baby to be born. She suggests being straightforward, but Éileana has tried. Without success, Rosalind is shocked and jokes about how bold Éileana seems. They brainstorm a plan together before partying, Rosalind sending Éileana off with encouragement back at the mansion. Eleanor's early return surprises Ben, who urges her to rest. On the way to her room, she recalls her father's affectionate gestures toward her mother and how she once mimicked them as a child. While changing, she learns that Kai retired early, assuming he's unwell. She rushes to his room, but is stopped by a knight. Ben explains that Kai has a fever and refuses her help. Éileana fumbles with the medicine box as Ben enters. Confused, she retreats later. Obby says Ben is left. Éileana climbs to the balcony but slips. Fortunately, Kai grabs her hand, pulling her to safety. Thankfully, Kai is still a knight and shining armor despite being ill. Kai catches Éileana just in time and lifts her into his arms, leaving her flustered and speechless. Her face burns as she takes in his build, forcing herself to look away. Look at her being shy. They're so cute. Once inside his room, Kai questions what she would have done if he had not saved her. Éileana apologizes for acting recklessly, hoping to ease his anger. Kai admits his fear of her getting hurt, while Éileana fires back with her own worries, explaining how frantic she felt, knowing he was sick and barred from seeing him. His silence pushes her to clarify that she never meant to force her way in. Up close, Éileana realizes his fever has worsened. She quickly guides him to bed and prepares to tend to him, searching for supplies just as Ben walks in and freezes, seeing Kai's condition. Ben quietly hands her warm water and a towel before leaving them alone. Éileana wipes Kai's sweat and warns that she needs to loosen his robe to help him cool down. As she does, she notices old burn marks on his shoulder. When she asks him to turn, even more scars appear across his back. Who did this to our sweet Kai? Kai explains that the scars came from his mother's punishment and his father's indifference. Éileana trembles as she listens, then realizes she's crying. How could a parent be so cruel? Kai reassures her that the past no longer hurts him. Éileana disagrees, silently, continuing to care for him and wishing he would call her by her name. The next day, Éileana checks on Kai in his office and confirms he's better. Satisfied, she leaves, intending to speak privately with Ben. Back in her room, Ben apologizes for his behavior. The other day, Éileana waves it off. More concerned with Kai's fever, Ben explains that Kai has had sudden unexplained fever since childhood, long before those people started tormenting him. Elena's shocked by his casual tone, noticing he even skipped using honorifics when referring to the Duke's family. He laughs lightly, offering to formally reintroduce himself, wanting to make sure she understands his loyalty and care. Éileana, realizing she has earned his trust, asks about Kai's parents' accident, suspecting it was no coincidence. Ben recounts the tragic events. Years ago, a maid was murdered. Kai's younger a brother had committed the act, and the family covered it up. The maid's older brother had retaliated, killing members of Kai's family in revenge. Éileana freezes, piecing together the tangled truth. She learns that Kai's brother revealed the secret by accident. Drunk and unaware of the servants' connections, Ben emphasizes that both he and Kai have kept the truth hidden for years. Kai feeling responsible for his family's deaths. Ben admits that he too carries guilt for protecting the servant and staying silent. The family's tragedy weighed heavily, yet Kai was still branded as cursed. Ben's voice trembles with remorse and regret. No wonder Kai carries so much on his shoulders. Éileana reassures him gently, urging him to care for himself despite the burden. With a confident stride, she leaves, leaving Ben feeling lighter, comforted, and unexpectedly relaxed. Éileana arrives at the training grounds and spots Kai mid-practice, his focus sharp as he flicks swords from the knights one by one. She cheers, feeling proud. Who knew watching swordplay could be so mesmerizing? Overhearing nearby knights, Éileana realizes they're mocking Kai, calling his birthmark a devil's gift. One even jokes about having one to gain the same power. Éileana's temper flares. She storms over to Thomas and stomps on his foot, scolding him for disrespecting Kai. Serves him right. A nearby servant carries a towel, but Éileana takes it herself, insisting she can handle things. Seeing Kai finish training, she offers to walk him back as they stroll. Kai notices her quiet demeanor and asks what's troubling her. Éileana explains the knight's behavior and her foot stomping intervention, then admits frustration that Kai didn't reprimand them. Kai calmly explains that Thomas is a great knight and is unaffected by their teasing. Éileana ponders his honesty and keeps walking side by side with him. A few days later, Éileana frets over Kai's lack of interest. Her plan to gift him something meaningful seems pointless. She asks Ben for insight, but he recalls nothing helpful. Undeterred, she takes Rosalind's advice and arranges a carriage to the capital. Determined to find the perfect gift, arriving in the bustling streets, Éileana notices villagers screaming. A thief charges towards her, but before panic sets in, she realizes neither she nor her maid is harmed. Thomas has already subdued the thief. Maybe I misjudged him, but he still needs to check his behavior. The capital. Guard drags the thief away, thanking Thomas for his quick action. Éileana watches, remembering Kai's kind words about Thomas's potential. She approaches him, giving thanks for handling the situation, but refuses to accept an apology for his earlier rudeness. Thomas, still absorbing her lecture, nods with understanding. Éileana gently reminds him that Kai values skill and potential over small mistakes, which explains why he didn't fire him despite his arrogance. Sometimes honesty hits harder than anger. Thomas promises to correct his behavior, determined to improve. Éileana smiles quietly, pleased that her words made a difference. The satisfaction is subtle but powerful. The next day, Éileana casually asks the maids how Thomas treats them, hearing nothing but praise for his kindness and diligence. She feels conflicted when she mentions him to Ben. Fire appears in his eyes. Before she can even ask, the butler is quick to express his frustration with Thomas. Slowly, he explains that Thomas's cocky attitude toward Kai had annoyed him to no end. His veins seem ready to pop as he recounts moments he wished Kai would fire him. Yet Kai remains steadfast. Éileana grins, sharing her own encounter with Thomas. Ben's expression shifts to delight, appreciating that she had lectured him effectively. He reminds her that Kai only lets Thomas stay because of his abilities, not because of blind favoritism. She's growing quite the network of loyal allies. That night, Éileana visits Kai, requesting a stroll in the garden. As they wander beneath a soft glow of lanterns, she twiddles a pin in her hands, nervously deciding how to present her gift. She directs him to sit on a bench, then carefully clips the pin onto his sleeve. Kai is genuinely touched, his usual stoicism giving way to warmth. Éileana explains that since he doesn't have any preference, maybe they should try establishing them, starting with pink as his favorite color. Éileana feels a quiet happiness, small gestures, honest words, and subtle victories like these make her world feel lighter. Even heroes need pins and little reminders that someone cares. I can't wait for them to finally get together. Choosing a gift for Kai wasn't as easy as Éileana thought it would be. Luckily for her, the sales lady came to her rescue, redirecting her to a pair of cufflinks that mirror her own eye color. Not going to lie, but those cufflinks absolutely look good on him. So good that Éileana can't take her eyes off Kai. Embarrassed at her ogling, she peels her gaze away from him, but the next words out of his mouth doesn't calm her. Thumping heart at all, he declares pink as his favorite color and flashes her a kind smile as he thanks her. Safe to say Éileana is down so bad. Retreating back to the mansion, Éileana has one request. She wants them to start sleeping in the same bed again. And surprisingly, Kai agrees almost instantly. Come to think of it, he has been really diligent with giving Éileana everything she asked for. Well, everything except a baby. Snuggled in bed. Éileana's eyes are once again glued to her husband. With a hand to his forehead, she can't help but wonder what caused his favor a few days ago. Proudly, she recounts how well she took care of him that day, and she'd do it all over again for him. Really, her enthusiasm and thoughtfulness makes Kai chuckle. And quite frankly, he looks forward to being cared for by Éileana. This man would welcome a fever with open arms just to make that happen. Elsewhere, Sir Thomas comes to the aid of an injured woman in the dead of a night when he bends down to help her. She pulls out a dagger and thrusts it right at him. His knightly instincts save him just in time. He disarms the woman and captures the mastermind behind the scheme. A prisoner extracting revenge on Thomas for turning him in. Knowing Thomas lets his guard down around women. The man counted on that weakness, and it's true. Thomas was raised to believe women must always be protected because of their frail and weak nature. That never changed until he met Éileana, a woman so fierce and feisty that he began to question his mother's teachings. Well, thank God for that, because it ended up saving his life. That morning, Éileana wakes up with the best of the best. Moods. In her dream, she tortured Kai's family, making sure they'd perish for everything that they did to him. I knew Éileana was crazy, but dare I say that this is an acceptable kind of crazy. Like, yes, girl, avenge your man. Just then, Albert comes to greet her, informing her all about Thomas's change of heart. And it seems that it isn't just Thomas, because Henry and Marie greet Éileana warmly, the same maids who have been avoiding her for a long time. Turns out they feel grateful that Éileana exposed Incan's schemes. Had she not done that, they could have been his next victims later. Éileana joins Kai for lunch, where he informs her that Incan is officially confined to the county until the end of his days, unfortunately. There's no luck with deconstructing the formula of Incan's drug. Despite being subjected to harsh interrogation, Incan insists on keeping a tight lip. A medicine that impregnates virgin women. I bet he's using questionable ingredients in that thing. Seeing the worried look on Elena's face, Kai reassures her that they'll continue investigating the mysterious substance ink used. Éileana is about to respond, but food comes flying in her direction. When the maid trips all of a sudden, with one flick of his hand, Kai swats it away midair, saving Éileana. He isn't spared, though, because his own clothes are stained as he cleans his clothes. He cuffs his sleeves, revealing toned arms and beautiful skin, and just like that, Éileana might as well just drool. What can I say? She's a S for her husband. Trying to distract herself from his arms, she wonders if Kai could spare a day for her. She braces herself for rejection, but it never comes. Instead, Kai gives her a fond look, expressing he'll always make time for her. This man is a whole green forest. As lunch ends, the maid Lena personally apologizes to Éileana for the mishaps, but what she doesn't expect is for Éileana to thank and praise her. If it hadn't been for the maid, her eyes would never have been blessed with such a view. Lena is flabbergasted, and she scurries away to spread the word to her fellow maids. Lady Éileana isn't the cruel duchess they think she is. Later that day, Éileana eagerly pens a letter to Rosalind, her courtship teacher, recounting all the progress she's made so far. Feeling bold, she even dares to move on to stage one of intimacy. Of course, she'll have to come up with a plan first, so it's off to the library with her. By morning, Albert finds her completely dozed off, along with draft plans for a festival date. Apparently, Éileana spent the night planning her first date with Kai, which explains the scattered drafts littering the floor. From Albert's expert opinion, the festival plan is perfect. You see, Kai had never been to the festival before because his parents had kept him away from the public eye. Hearing this, Éileana is even more motivated to make it happen. Her first order of business, arranging teleportation plans with a sorcerer. She'll be damned if they waste 2 days traveling to the festival. The following morning, Sidrian himself, the Lord of the Black Tower, arrives at the mansion. The Black Tower is an independent group of sorcerers infamous for refusing to submit to the king's authority. It's Elena's first time meeting Sidre, yet the two immediately fall into playful banter, despite Sidrian's close friendship with Kai. Éileana stubbornly calls him Lord of the Black Tower, much to his irritation. Still, Sidrian hears her out, and to Elena's surprise, he refuses any payment. Helping Kai, he says, is compensation enough. Over dinner, Kai tells Éileana all about his friendship with Sidre, the way he speaks so fondly. Maybe Sidrian isn't so bad at all. Later that night, Éileana wanders through the mansion and finds Max still training. She recalls how Max wanted to be at least half as good as Kai in swordsmanship, so she decides to help him out. Her idea of doing that, barking out harsh encouragement to her. Max shouldn't even dream of being half as good. He should start lower, aiming to be as good as Kai's shoe, oddly enough. Max takes her words to heart. I'm convinced these two share one brain, so pleased at having helped reignite Max's motivation. Éileana heads back, Inside, but just as she's about to, she encounters some knights hauling in a drunk Colin. Truthfully, this is the last thing that they want to be doing. After all, they all know what Colin is like when drunk. He just can't shut up. About his expeditions with Duke Kaihan. Mayhart, Éileanna turns her neck so fast. It could have snapped. Swiftly, she darts to the knights, relieving them of Colin's company. It just so happens that she's just as eager to hear about Kai's expeditions as much as Colin loves talking about them. She wasn't kidding. The two literally ended up chatting. Until dawn, days later, the day of Éileanna, and Kai's date finally arrives. Since this is their first date, she takes her time getting ready, making sure she looks stunning. Her whole look is so enchanting that even Abby thinks she looks like an angel. And speaking of good looks, Kai looks dashing himself, and he's even wearing the cufflink she gifted him heading out. Éileanna wonders what Kai thinks about her outfit. She's beautiful, he says, but something about it makes Éileanna double take. After a full interrogation and a hearty back and forth, he finally manages to reassure Éileanna, yep, she's a woman, all right. They meet with Sidrian, and Elena's thoughts immediately wander to Kai's stories about their friendship. Who would have thought that Sidrian used to be a praised boy? Are we glad he isn't one anymore? At least people can marry. The guy, you know, as promised, Sidrian, teleports the two to the masquerade festival. Their excitement grapples. Éileanna, they're officially on their first dates. The town itself is bustling with people. As they navigate their way around the festival, it's Kai who makes the first move, extending his hand out for Éileanna to hold hand in hand. Éileanna couldn't be any happier. This may be the first time Kai has been to a festival, but Éileanna is determined to make sure that it won't be the last. A radiant smile blooms across her face as she tells him her goal, to make more first-time memories with Kai. Kai softens his gaze, touched by her thoughtfulness. Although he doesn't say anything, his heart races uncontrollably. From flying lanterns to fluffy cotton, candy. Almost everything attracts them. One particular game, though, catches Éileanna's eye, a log-cutting game. Immediately she asks that they play, knowing full well that Kai would dominate all those logs in one go, but the game master knows a sword master when he sees one. Sneaky as he is, he hands Kai a fake sword, hoping to cheat him off his money. However, before Kai can even play, tragedy breaks out. A lion escapes and begins terrorizing the people. And directly in its line of sight is, you guessed it, the game. Master, I bet he regrets giving Kai that fake sword now, fake sword in hand. Kai charges, and well, I guess his skills really precede him because he still manages to slay the beast, triumphant. Kai returns to Éileanna, his expression unreadable. She saw the beast, so why didn't she run? Éileanna explained simply. It's just that her faith in him greatly outmatched her fear of the beast. This moves Kai, but before he can react, commotion stirs again. Geez, let the man breathe. Thankfully, it's not another lion this time, just a woman being a Karen. The painter tries to reason with her, but she's about to swing her hand right at him. Luckily, her partner catches her hand midair, offering her words of comfort before the crowd. Just looking at them disgusts Éileanna. She isn't buying the happy relationship performance at all. From the corner of his eye, the man spots Éileanna, and unexpectedly he recognizes her. He greets her loudly, calling her by name before he sets off. But hearing this, the crowd stirs, immediately catching on that she's the Duchess. Whispers begin to erupt. The man she's with is probably the famous cursed Duke. Who is that man, and why is he ruining their date? Éileanna drags Kai away from the crowd. So much for their first date. Feeling defeated? She suggests they go home, but Kai reassures her that he's fine. He redirects her gaze to a nearby play and leads her there. Once the play begins, the audience would be too preoccupied to even recognize them. Well, it's not like Éileanna was planning to argue anyway. The play, however, leaves her mortified. Without exception, she demands to see the playwright. That night, she and Kai stay at Baron estate, the lord of the local. He's happy to help Éileanna locate the playwright, informing her that they'll probably be able to meet by morning. He shows them to the guest room where Kai expresses concern for Éileanna. She smiles sheepishly. She did look quite shaken after the play. And why wouldn't she be? The play itself was a reenactment of the future she once saw. She wonders if the playwright is the old woman. If not, then could someone else know about the future? Turning back into her surroundings, Éileanna expresses disappointment to herself. Honestly, she thought she could have made their first date way better than that, as if the world understood her feelings. She spots 2 bottles of wine in their room, drinking her sorrows away. This woman is a mood. She pours a glass for herself and Kai, but one sip in and he stiffens immediately. He hurries to air out the room, confusing Éileanna, but he tells her that she'll understand soon enough. As soon as he says that, she begins feeling hot all over. It then clicks. The wine was laced. It's not poison, but rather a substance for steamy nights. If you know what I mean. Kai gathers her in his arms and carries her to the bed, just as she thought. He confirms that they've been drugged with an aphrodisiac. Kai himself was drugged with the same substance a few years back, so of course, he recognized it right away. Fortunately, drugs don't affect him much, but the same can't be said for Éileanna, who is already feeling the drugs' effects. Kai holding and carrying her did nothing to calm her nerves. If anything, it made her feel even more aroused, trying to make her feel better. Kai reassures her that its effects will pass in about 12 hours. I don't think our girl can hold out for that long. She scoots away from Kai, hoping to keep herself from pouncing on him. But not even 5 minutes later, and she's already begging him to help her. At this point, she is feeling so hot that she wants to rip her clothes off. Kai instantly leaps into action, and no, it's not the steamy action we've been waiting for. He starts ripping the curtains off, and just in time, too, because Éileana begins peeling her nightgown off before she knows it. She's wrapped like a burrito, calming down. She lets her thoughts run loose. She asks Kai if he's ever thought about the world ending out loud. She expresses how she never wants Kai to die. After all, she needs him. But the question is, does he need her? She falls asleep before he can even respond. But truthfully, Kai himself doesn't even know the answer. Ouch, that's just sad. The following morning, the Baron apologizes to Éileana and Kai to make up for it. He bears good news. The playwright Will has arrived. Éileana doesn't beat around the bush. Point blank. She asks if Will has seen the future and met the old woman. Will knows nothing about an old woman, but she confesses about knowing the future. She's someone plagued with prophetic dreams. How you see, as the two chat, Éileana realizes that the future Will foresaw was ahead of the events she saw. Unlike Éileana, who has nobody to tell, Will has someone she can confide in about the horrifying future, and that makes Éileana slightly envious, desperate. She asks Will for a favor that they keep in touch and exchange letters. Will smiles. Sure. They can write to each other until the monster invasion comes. It's a fun inside joke at first. That is until Éileana reveals that it's set to happen in 19 to 20 years. After the meeting, Will catches her. Partner up on everything. Will's prophetic dreams usually only appear 3 years into the future, so this feels impossible. Though it seems like an anomaly. Will trusts Selena. She knows too much about the future for it to be a coincidence. Heck, she even knows all about the monsters, calling them Elas. The world ending in 19 years instead of 3 isn't a relief to Will's partner. The end of the world coming so soon was the only reason Will agreed to marry him. After all, well, luckily for him, Will has no intention of breaking off their engagement in the county of Mars, and Incan sees at his sister Rebecca for sentencing him to lifelong confinement. Convinced the document containing his sentence isn't even signed by their father, enraged, he orders his servant to sneak into Rebecca's room only to be refused. Incan laughs, clearly amused. The servant must be forgetting he holds all the cards. Surely he wouldn't want his wife to know the truth, right? That her husband, the servant, is an infertile man who stole Incan's drug to baby trap her into becoming his wife. That is hella messed up. Days later, Éileana tries to bond with Kai through painting, the one hobby she excels at. She paints him from life, capturing his features, but adds her own twist, giving him her pink eyes. She proudly shows him the finished piece, oblivious to the distant expression on his face. Girl, are you dense? If my wife painted me without my dark markings, I'd be sad too. Later that day, a servant alerts Éileana to an issue. The knights are brawling. To be exact, it's Thomas, Max, and Colin fighting each other over who gets to become Elena's escort knight. They all have their fair share of life-changing moments with Éileana, which explains why all of them wanted the job, ultimately. The choice is still up to Éileana, and she chooses, drumroll please, Sir Thomas. Like a good dog, Thomas diligently follows Éileana around as they look for blue paint that matches Kai's eyes. They're about to take a break when Thomas intervenes in a children's squabble, saving a girl named Anna from bullies, seeing Éileana in all her ethereal beauty. The children can only assume she's an angel, and she doesn't bother to correct them. With the bullies taken care of, Éileana tries her best to comfort Anna, offering her a tart as a treat. Anna happily munches the tart, but she can only wish for a child named Hans to be there with her. And like on, Hans comes running into view. The sight of both children makes Éileana pause. Anna and Hans, these are the same people who sacrificed their lives to save her in the future. Feeling all emotional, she promises to change their fates. Back at the mansion, Albert informs Éileana that Anna and Hans already receive assistance from House Mayhart. After all, their mothers study herbology, classes funded by the state, and are ensured jobs at the soon-to-open herb distribution centers. As Éileana teaches Kai how to paint, she wonders if Anna and Hans save her out of gratitude for Kai's support. Lost in thought, she doesn't realize Kai's gaze on her, and even more absent-minded, she accidentally pats his head. This girl is definitely one of the funniest female leads out there. She confesses that she intended to do it secretly, but to her surprise, Kai tells her that there's no reason to do it secretly. Days later at Marson County, Rebecca is informed about Incan's escape. She's tipped off that he's headed to Mayhart County, so that's exactly where she's going. And while she's at it, she might as well just buy black clothes in advance. Rebecca already planning Incan's funeral is such queen behavior, but something tells me she's not a friend of the Mayharts either. At the Mayhart mansion, Colin shapishly offers to accompany Éileana on her outing for the day, something that Éileana has no problem with as she's getting ready. Abby styles her with one of Chidra's handmade magical earrings, a pair that changes colour to match her outfits. Éileana meets Anna in town, but before they can enjoy themselves, they're alerted to monsters appearing in the area, which prompts Éileana to deploy Colin instantly. However, she finds the timing all too strange. Monsters appearing just when she's in town. Something's fishy. She chooses to trust her gut without thinking twice. She asks Anna a favour to bring Elena's earring, run to the Mayhart mansion, and give it to the Duke. Just as Anna takes off, a man sneaks up from behind. Éileana, it's no other than Ink and Mawson, without knights by her side and her maid's life on the line. Éileana is left with no choice but to go with him as she's being abducted. Éileana silently puts her faith in Anna and Kai. The least she can do is buy them time, so she pulls out the vomit card. Seeing a pub nearby, she then tells Incan to buy her a beer. It's the only way she'll stop puking. Reluctant, he agrees, slipping a cloak over her, but as he does so, Éileana can only notice his charred fingers. Just what on earth has he been doing? Upon entering the tavern, Éileana quickly glances outside to see that Incan's men are still positioned there, and sure enough, he is watching them intently, making it difficult for her to escape. Realizing this, Éileana has no choice but to get the attention of the men inside the tavern by announcing to everyone that a reward of 1,000 gold coins will be given to whoever can capture Inca. Quick thinking. Éileana, hearing this, all the men quickly agree, since it is a hefty price after all. They all then charge towards Inca, but to Éileana's disappointment, all are easily taken down by Inca. Seeing this, Éileana quickly escapes, but is stopped by Inca, who harshly grabs her and pins her to the ground. Éileana struggles to escape Inca, but realizes she is no match for her strength. She helplessly calls for Kai. When Éileana slowly starts to be unconscious due to Inca's choke, she then sees Inca being stabbed by Kai. Seeing Kai, Éileana knows that she's already safe, and then she collapses in her dream. Éileana sees the old lady again, who begins to tell her that Éileana has already experienced her first awakening. Seeing this, Éileana starts asking questions, but the old lady tells her that she can't intervene since it might be dangerous. Thus the old lady only reminds her that she is the only hope of stopping humanity's extinction, and hopes that Éileana succeeds so that the old lady's child's death will not be in vain. The old lady seems to act like a system, but her child. I wonder who it is, and she seems to have some powers within her, too. Gosh, all these questions. Back at the mansion, while Kai watches a sleeping Éileana, he asks the maid if Éileana is safe from harm, and the maid assures him that aside from the scratches on her neck, she is all right. Afterwards, while Kai is alone with the sleeping Éileana, he slowly reaches for her hand and brings it to his face. Kai starts to remember the past where even at a young age he already experienced his parents' hatred and disgust towards him because of his inborn scar. But even so, as an innocent child, he still loves his parents. Kai begins to see how unfairly his parents treat him after his brother Martin is born, since he always witnessed how his parents, especially his mother, favored Martin. It became worse when someone found a book about his scars, claiming it was a demon. Curse! Knowing this, his mother starts to harm him, but always fails since no scar stays on Kai's face. Gosh, how can these parents be so horrible? By the age of 9, his parents didn't even want him to have any sword training so that he wouldn't overshadow Martin. But Kai didn't listen and secretly trained. As time passed, a tragedy happened to Kai's family where everyone died in an accident during their trip, and only he was alive since he was left in the house. Because of this, people started to speculate that he might be cursed, but he didn't care what others said anymore. Years pass and Kai then meets Éileana through an arranged marriage. He thought was only on paper, but now he values Éileana more than that, living together. Kai learns more about Éileana, but he struggles to understand her. She punishes anyone who speaks behind his back, yet she touches his face without hesitation. Kai is even more shocked when Éileana tells him that she wants to sleep with him and bear his child. But the weirdest thing is that because he sees how sincere Éileana is towards him, he also uses her sincerity as an excuse to show his own sincerity. Kai starts to remember how strongly Éileana rejects the idea of their divorce, and how he stays speechless when she does something frustrating. How does he start to open up and talk to her about his past and scars? Even the staff in the castle's like her, since she only laughs when they make small mistakes. Realizing all these things, Kai already knows that Éileana is a good person and the castle staff needs her, not only as a duchess, but also as a wife. Kai also remembers him having a second thought about whether he is worthy of Éileana, since in the past his father beat him after he asked for a pet bird, saying he didn't deserve it. He got beaten just for wanting a bird. His parents are ruthless. Kai also admits he panics when he learns that Éileana was kidnapped by Inca, and everything he does afterward is a blur. All he wants is to save Éileana. Because of this, Kai knows one thing, and that is he can't live without Éileana. Meanwhile, upon waking up, Éileana sees Kai's stressed face and wordly asks how he is. But Kai directly asks Éileana not to get hurt and always stay by his side. Finally, you don't have to punish yourself for wanting to be with her. Duke. The following morning, the doctor checks up on Éileana, despite Elena's insistence that she's already feeling well. The doctor gently but firmly encourages her to drink the herbal medicine. Éileana hesitates, feeling a mix of frustration and resignation, but she follows the advice, unable to entirely hide her reluctance. Afterwards, Kai arrives with some peaches. He then starts to peel the peaches for Éileana to eat and enjoy. While enjoying their time together, Éileana can't help but stare at Kai skillfully peeling the peaches, and later on asks if he will also peel some fruit tomorrow, to which Kai innocently nods, making Éileana excited and even thinks that she'll drink the medicine. Even if it tastes bad, this couple is so cute together. The following day, Éileana is shocked to hear from Ben that Inca's body disappeared without a trace, and a witness narrates that his body suddenly melted before his eyes. Hearing this, Éileana begins to think that Inca might be using black magic, since during their last meeting, she noticed a foul smell from Inka and also thinks that it's impossible for Inka's body to quickly recover after his upper body was completely destroyed afterwards. Éileanna remembers a light appearing from her hand and hitting Inka, sending him flying. Because of this, she concludes that it was not an illusion. She thinks it could be a power that is in conflict with Inka. However, after the incident, she's unable to summon the light in her hand again. Lost in her thoughts, Ahmad approaches her and asks if she is free to have dinner with Kai tonight. She excitedly agrees, and Éileanna forgets about the incident. Meanwhile, Rebecca receives a letter informing her that Inka's body is already taken care of. After reading it, she then burns it while commenting how much of a nuisance Inka was, but luckily her man successfully finishes the job. If he is not able to kill Inka himself and is killed by others, he must use what she gave him to get rid of Inka's body. Later, while Rebecca is alone, she realizes that for all these years, it has been easy to manipulate people because she can brainwash them. But now, it is difficult after Duchess Elena's arrival, hence why Rebecca instructed one of her maids to hide her black dress, since Kai had not died because of the thief. So there are no tears to be shed. While she was thinking, a maid hurriedly approached her and said that Rebecca's father wants to meet her and looks furious. Hearing this, Rebecca only nods and calmly proceeds to her father's office. Upon her arrival, her father instantly rants and blames Rebecca for her failed plan, and Kai must think that their family is one of the people who orchestrated the kidnapping of Éileanna, putting their family in a difficult position. Annoyed by her father, Rebecca tries to assure him that everything will be fine and that she will fix it, but he is even more furious at her calm demeanor, so she uses her power to make him follow her. Meanwhile, Éileanna is wondering why her family has not yet replied to her letter given the distance between their homes, but then brushes it off and starts looking at her checklist of steps to a successful relationship. I really love Elena's innocence and straightforwardness. While resting, Éileanna can't help but remember Kai's soft gesture and smile. But then she suddenly remembers Kai talking about divorcing her one day for her sake, which she promised not to agree to if it ever happened. Later, Éileanna announces to her maid that she will be taking a walk and assures her that she will only walk inside the castle, which makes the maid relieved. While walking in the garden, Éileanna sees Max and Thomas running towards her and announcing that they will be escorting her. Éileanna agrees to them and also can't help but notice Colin's absence. But Max and Thomas try to explain that Colin is in training, thus Éileanna accepts this, but is somewhat not convinced by their excuse. As Éileanna walks around, she finally sees Mina, who also has been absent for a couple of days due to the injury she got. During the incident, Éileanna asks how Mina is, and the maid happily assures her that she's feeling better. But she can't say that Colin is well because of what happened to his face. Learning this, Éileanna talks to Max and Thomas, who later crack and tell her that Colin feels guilty and disappointed with what happened to Éileanna. Later on, while Kai is peeling fruits for her, Éileanna shares with him that she wants to assure Colin that it's not his fault, but Kai advises her that it's better to give Colin a light punishment to make him feel better, which Éileanna agrees to. Kai then hands Éileanna the fruit shaped like a bunny, making Éileanna comment about being the bunny as his favourite animal, to which Kai only stares and smiles at her. Yep, you are the rabbit, thus you're his favourite. The following day, Éileanna meets up with Colin, feeling guilty and embarrassed, only bows his head. Éileanna remembers Kai's advice and decides to act on it. She firmly tells Colin that he failed to notice the danger approaching her and did not protect her when she needed it. Listening to this, Colin feels even more guilty and disappointed with himself. He starts to apologize to Éileanna. Éileanna, however, stops him and informs him that his punishment is to be her bodyguard for 6 months without pay. Colin tries to protest, insisting he doesn't deserve such a light punishment. Éileanna interrupts him, making it clear that this is what she wants. Hearing this, Colin tearfully accepts and promises to do his best. Éileanna smiles because true enough, Kai's suggestion is effective in regaining Colin's self-esteem. Meanwhile, Max and Thomas start protesting outside after learning of Colin's punishment. To them, it's not a punishment, but a reward. They also want to be assigned as Éileanna's bodyguards. This leaves her with no choice but to accept the two. These guards are so cute. Towards Éileanna afterwards, Ben informs Éileanna about the report he gathered about Inka's death. He finds that Inka was already using black magic and the books in their house can prove so. Ben also learns that Inka was violent towards Rebecca, his sister, and other people. This made it hard for them to control Inka. The report came from the dead butler of the Marsons household. Ben adds that Count Marson denies their family has anything to do with Inka's actions and quickly cuts Inka off from their family tree. Next, Ben provides an update on herb distribution and expects they will be able to start the trial. He also adds that Anna's mother is already in a managerial position. No one tries to oppose, which might be because they know how Anna helped Éileanna during the incident. Next, Éileanna looks at Sidrian weirdly, who looks so lifeless and haggarded. But Sidrian tells her that he is fine and she doesn't have anything to worry about. Éileanna proceeds by thanking Sidrian for the earring with the tracking spell he gifted her since it helps them. And find her. Hearing this, Sidrian replies that it's no big deal and hands Éileanna a box of jewellery that are magical artifacts. Seeing this, Éileanna can't help but ask Sidrian if he's only doing this because he likes Kai, because no one would do such meticulous work for so long with no arrest, and also because Sidrian is known to have a nasty personality. Taken aback, Sidrian didn't have a choice but to assure Ielina that he was doing it because of Kai and because in the past Kai had helped him escape from the priesthood. Ielina becomes serious and asks Sidrian if a person using black magic has a nasty stench and if there is other magic that can repel black magic. Sidrian replies that maybe that nasty stench comes from a decomposing body, that the black magic user needs to keep corpses around them during dinner time. Ielina happily eats while telling Kai about her day and how she met with Sidrian, who gave her magical jewelry. Kai notices how happy Ielina is and asks her seriously if she's happy to be with Sidrian. Someone is a little jelly. Ielina is then shocked when Kai's plate suddenly cracks. He casually blames the plates. How shameless. You are clearly jealous. Duke, the following morning, Ielina wakes to find many gifts in her room and she looks at the maids, who tell her they are all from Kai. Well, Kai, are you trying to one-up someone we know? Afterwards, the doctor arrives to check on Ielina again. And after a thorough check, he approved that Ielina could already walk outside and return to sleep in the couple's bedroom, making Ielina excited since she could do the activities she wanted without restriction. Later that night, while Ielina and Kai are in bed, she starts to share how Anna's life became better and is already treated right by other kids with the help of Ben. And she cutely asks Kai if he can join her on a boat trip together soon when he is not busy, which he quickly agrees to. After Ielina seems to be unable to sleep, she asks Kai to join her for a walk outside the garden, which he happily agrees to. In the garden, the couple is enjoying the silence together. Then Ielina suddenly trips, so Kai extends his hand to guide Ielina since it is also dark outside. Ielina is touched by Kai's gesture and agrees to find a love that is sincere and real. Meanwhile, a man and woman are traveling to visit Ielina. Who could this person be? While Ielina and Kai are walking hand in hand, she feels her heart beating irregularly, but she tries her best to calm it. So they decide to go back to the bedroom. Back in the bedroom, Ielina still finds it hard to sleep, so she asks Kai to tell her stories, which he readily agrees to. As time passes, while she listens, she drifts off to sleep. Seeing this, Kai tucks her into bed and stares at her lovingly while promising that he will do everything it takes to protect and keep her safe. Oh gosh, where can we find a man like Kai? The following morning, Kai instructs Ben not to wake Ielina and to let her sleep, which Ben obeys. Hence, as soon as Ielina wakes up, she feels instantly recharged. After sleeping in, later on, while she's taking a walk, Ben approaches Ielina and tells her that she has visitors waiting. Outside, Ielina then turns and heads outside to see who the visitors are. Upon arriving outside, Ielina is shocked to see the newcomers. The woman, Mary, quickly hugs her, clearly happy to see her, but the man hotly tells her that they came to take her home and to quickly ride the carriage. After all the confusion, Ielina invites her brother, Edward, for a snack and asks him why he's eager to take her home. Edward then explains that after receiving her letter and learning that Ielina had been hurt and kidnapped, he and their father decided it was best for Ielina to return home. Hearing this, Ielina quickly declines and assures Edward that she is safe and will not leave Kai. Edward, however, disagrees and explains that she is not safe in the Duce. Ielina counters by saying she was kidnapped at the capital, implying it is safer here, and adds that the kidnapper is also in the capital. Ielina quickly instructs the maid to bring all her jewelry along with a magical artifact that will keep her safe, just to prove to Edward that she is well protected by her husband. But Edward does not believe it is all Kai's doing. Dude, Kai's head over heels in love with Ielina and is even willing to shield her from anything. Knowing this, Ielina adds that she also has 3 personal bodyguards who are willing to risk their lives. And on cue, Max, Colin, and Thomas show themselves to Edward. Ielina even adds that the 3 are very skillful in fighting and protecting, thus making her safer here. Ielina adds that she's grateful to Edward and her father for their concern, but they don't need to overreact. But Edward becomes serious and says they should never have agreed to let Ielina marry someone as dangerous as Kai. Even mentions the Duke's so-called curse, and angry Ielina is about to defend Kai, but is stopped when Kai arrives and welcomes Edward, telling him to rest. Edward, in all his annoying self, tries to decline, but has no choice but to accept, and that ended later that night. While preparing for bed, Ielina questions why he suddenly stepped in just as she was about to turn. Edward bawled for his woods. Kai tells her that he doesn't want her to argue with her family for him. However, Ielina declares that she only wants to serve justice. Her words cause a fond smile on Kai's face. He just keeps falling in love with her, just admit it. Afterwards, Ielina apologizes to Kai for Edward's rude and ugly comments about him, but Kai only tells her that he doesn't mind it at all and was only concerned about what Ielina would think about him because of this. Ielina realizes that Kai is used to the snide and ugly comments about him, but she promises that she will not let such a thing happen in the future. The next morning, while Ielina and Edward are having tea, Edward again asks her to return home and not think about the contract. However, she tells him it is not about the contract and that she's already forgotten about it because she truly wants to stay by Kai's side. No, your sister's in love. Edward, leave her be. Edward doesn't back down and even tells Ielina that Miel is already willing to take her place. And upon hearing this, Ielina becomes suspicious since Miel is not the self-sacrificing type. But Edward tells her that Miel might have changed after knowing that Ielina got into an accident. Still, despite Edward's words, she refuses to go home. A few days pass. While Éileana is enjoying her time outside, she notices that Edward is still around, but she doesn't mind his presence and instead asks Mary how she is. Mary then excitedly talks about what happened while Éileana was gone and tells Éileana that she misses her lady, Éileana, so much. But Éileana quickly corrects her, reminding her that she is now a duchess, to which Mary quickly nods and apologizes. Afterwards, Edward asks Éileana to go with him for a walk. He then confronts her by saying that he knows that she lied when she declared that the reason she wanted to marry the Duke back then was that she loved him. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See